Hey guys, so today I'm finally going to tell you my ghost stories. I know you have been waiting patiently for them. So we got our little companion up here today. And by little, I mean gigantic. It's burning hot in here. The lights are super bright. Unfortunately, filming at nighttime really isn't an option. I just don't have the lighting. But you guys should be watching this in the dark. So I definitely am going to have a disclaimer. I'm not the greatest at telling stories. Actually, I really don't know if I'm good or bad at telling stories. I just tell them. So you'll have to tell me. I'll try to keep on track with the topics, but I do seem to kind of go off the rails a little bit. I couldn't decide if I wanted to use spooky music in the background or just storytime music in the background, so I guess it'll be a surprise for me. You'll know in 3, 2, 1. I know that some of you probably don't believe in ghosts, and that's totally fine. I mean, you've never experienced it, maybe you just don't believe in that type of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. So think of it as just a fun story time for you. But these experiences were very real for me. A lot of them I have turned over and over again in my head trying to rationalize them, and they just can't be rationalized. In most of the stories I will go over rational explanations and why they probably don't work, like the things that I've thought about to try to, I don't know, try to debunk them, I guess, and it just doesn't make sense. Here I go, I'm getting off the rails again. So, to preface it, I have been having ghost type of experiences since I was very little, and I would say probably around the age of 10 we moved into a house that really seemed to, I guess, open my mind to it, because at 10 you don't really think about those things. I wasn't ever under the impression of even like ghosts exist or don't exist. It was just like whatever to me. I'm just a kid, I'm playing games, minding my own business, I don't care. But this house had something wrong with it. From then on it seemed like most of the houses I lived in were older, and of course with old homes comes a lot of history. A lot of this history stuck around and I experienced it. So I don't know whether it is more something of them being drawn to me. I mean, I do kind of get this aspect that supernatural activity is kind of drawn to me, but I want nothing to do with it. I don't want to be a part of it. I'm freaked out by it. If it happens, it happens, but like I don't want it to happen. I'd rather just listen to ghost stories than be a part of one, if you know what I'm saying. The house that I do live in currently has nothing here. There's nothing here. It's awesome. But I won't say weird things don't still happen. I have weird experiences. I mean, literally my boyfriend jokes around that I can predict the future, or I have like this weird insight where my dreams will come true that day. And it's not like, hey, I'm having deja vu. Like, these are full drawn out dreams with major pieces of the day in them, and then they happen. Or, you know, I haven't seen someone in months, haven't even thought about them, and then one day I'll just be driving in the car and I'm like, hey, what are the odds of me seeing that person today? And literally a couple minutes later, them walking down the sidewalk. I'm not kidding. This actually happened, and it was really, really freaky for me. Just weird little things like that. It's like intuition. I don't know. So it makes me think that that may have some sort of weird connection with experiencing things that aren't quite normal. But before I get crazy off the track, I just wanted to preface it a little bit, and let's just dive in, guys. So the first house I started experiencing weird things in, I already kind of told you about. It was a tiny little ranch home, which means basically just a one-story house, pretty much a rectangle. There wasn't much space in it. It was very small, very quaint, and from the outside you really wouldn't be freaked out by this house. It was very cute, you know, anybody would want to live there. I was pretty young. I'm about 9, 10 years old when we move in. I just remember walking into the house and feeling this weight that came with it. Of course, at this point in my life, I'm not jumping to conclusions. I'm not like, hey, there's ghosts here, you know. I'm so little, I don't really acknowledge it. I notice that it's there, but I don't think anything of it. So of course I got the smallest room in the house, my sister the second largest, and my mom the largest. There were only 3 bedrooms. Very tiny little thing. You could really see from one end of the house to the other. Right off the bat, my mom was unpacking some of the stuff and she noticed something weird in the closet, which, guys, I didn't know about this until way after we moved out of the place. I wasn't old enough to know about this at the time, so this is knowledge that I didn't have. Keep that in mind. She was going through the closet and she noticed that the drywall had been cut open, which is super bizarre. So of course, she opened it and was like, "What is this?" And inside of the wall, she found a ton of really raunchy photos, if you know what I'm saying. They were not PG-13, they were totally inappropriate and very dark from my understanding. They weren't like, haha, we're having fun doing some scandalous stuff. They had just really negative connotations in the pictures without going into too much detail because I don't think it's appropriate. I have no idea if it has anything to do with the other stuff in the house, or maybe it directly does, and maybe it wasn't something so much as these people that owned the house before died in it and are haunting it, but more like these people had negative aspects to their personality, and darkness and like negativity really breeds that kind of stuff. You can pull it in unknowingly. So it's totally possible by doing this weird stuff, they were also doing other weird things. You know, I have no idea. So that was strange in of itself. It didn't have paranormal stuff to it, but it maybe could have something to do with why the house was so bad. Luka doesn't want to be a part of this no more. These candles kind of stink. They look nice, right? But I feel like I'm literally breathing in perfume. So right off the bat in this house, I knew something was wrong with my bedroom. There was just this feeling, you guys, and I still cannot really describe it in words. There was something else about my bedroom specifically. Something that just felt wrong. Like I didn't want to be in there. It was so scary. And you know, it really shouldn't have been because it was literally the size of a closet. It was the tiniest little room ever for a kid. The way that they had set it up was you walk through the door, my bed is over here, and the closet is over here. And the closet was one of the, you know, you slide open the doors kind. So I was always freaked out by this closet, right? It just always felt like something was watching me in that bedroom. And I know that rationally speaking, little kids are always kind of like, oh my God, they're scared, what's under the bed? And it's natural to be scared of the closet, right? But before I moved in there, I wasn't like that at all. I wasn't scared of the closet in my bedroom in the old house. It was just this room. This room was so scary. In an attempt to make me like the room, my mom actually let me paint the ugliest mural on the wall ever because I wasn't really good at painting back then. And I still didn't want anything to do with the bedroom. I would always take my toys out of the closet and I would put them in a different room and play with them, or I would sleep in my mom's bedroom at night because the room made me so uncomfortable. And you think, honestly, since it did make me so uncomfortable, she would have just swapped me in my sister's room, but she didn't do that, so whatever. So that was the first thing that just felt unnerving. So when the experiences start happening at this point in time, since my mom was a single mother, she was either gone at work, home sleeping, or out with boyfriends and friends. Was it the smartest thing for her to always be gone? No, but that's the reality of the situation. She was, for the most part, never home, you guys. My sister ended up moving in with my dad, so it was really just me being home alone most of the time. So after my sister moved out, I ended up taking her room and making it pretty much like my playroom. I had a PC in there, I had my PlayStation, my PS2. That was pretty much where I did all of my gaming as a kid. Where I played with any toys, I would always go into that bedroom. It was the only room in the house that truly felt light, I guess. You just didn't have the weight of everything else in that house. So the first thing that happened that was kind of off happened to me personally. I used to have this T-Rex, okay? I don't know if some of you might have had this toy when you were little, but it was the best toy ever. It was like, seriously, this big of a T-Rex. And if you like hit the back of the T-Rex, it would roar or make bone-crushing sounds. But I mean, like, you had to bop it. Like, you had to hit it hard. You couldn't just press a button and it would roar. You really had to hit this thing So it was like any chance I got, I would be playing with that toy specifically because I was really big on dinosaurs when I was a kid. And I remember this one time, I was trying my best to go to sleep in this tiny little bedroom that I hated so much. So I was struggling to go to sleep, and what do you think I hear out of the closet, you guys? My favorite toy was roaring. It's like 11 o'clock, midnight, and the T-Rex is roaring in the closet that I hated so much. So of course, I get up, I turn on the light, and I reluctantly open the closet to see if it had fallen. Even though I was scared, I'm still a rational human being, and I just figured it had fallen down and something had hit the back of it and it maybe roared, right? So I open the closet door, and it is on top of all of my toys. There's nothing touching this toy, nothing. And the feeling I got when I looked at it, oh God, I was so scared. It quickly became the one toy in the house that I was the most scared of. It really felt like one of those Annabelle creation situations where there was something in that toy and it was watching me. It felt so weird. We could say maybe this thing shorted out. I'm not sure. You will have to tell me what you think. It didn't happen often. It wasn't like you would think if it did short out, it was going to happen multiple times in a row, and it didn't. I have to blow the candles out, you guys. I'm like dying. Whew, the candles look nice, but I cannot handle that much perfume. I'm freaking out. After that happened, I really didn't play with that toy anymore. So after that, I ended up shoving it into the back of the closet. I never wanted to see it again. Of course, months go by and nothing happens in this house. So the toy did end up striking back after that. It was months that did go by and nothing happened. It was still in the back of my closet, untouched. I remember being in my gaming room, so I wasn't in my bedroom. The toy was in my bedroom closet, but I wasn't in there. And I heard bone crushing in the closet coming from my bedroom. So of course, I walk in there and I look back in the back of the closet and there's nothing touching this thing, you guys. Nothing. At this point, I had had enough of it. I didn't even want anything to do with it. I didn't want it in that bedroom, so I took it and I shoved it in a closet down the hallway. And wouldn't you know, after that, it never did it again, you guys. It never, ever did it again. But one day I ended up having my friend over and my mom wasn't home. I know, it's totally irresponsible, but this is the story. We were hanging out in basically my gaming room. Let's just call it the gaming room because that's what it was. We had all of the lights off in the rest of the house and we stayed in that room. But I had to go pee and I was like, I gotta go. At this time we did have a Jack Russell Terrier, just a tiny little thing. He was so rambunctious, you guys, so spunky. So I'm in the bathroom and everything's fine and all of a sudden I hear her screaming. Let's say her name is Abby, okay? Abby is screaming bloody murder. She's calling my name over and over again, and I'm literally freaking out. I had just been in the bathroom for maybe 2 minutes, so I ran into the room and closed the door behind me because I was so freaked out, and I'm like, what are you yelling about? Like, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? And she's like, Christine, something hit the door. Something was trying to open the door. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's probably the dog. You know, he would try to do that. Dogs try to open doors all the time. And she's like, no, you don't understand. The doorknob was turning and the dog was in the room with me. Something was trying to get in that room with her when I wasn't in there. But it really stuck with me because of how scared she was. It wasn't something she was laughing about. She wasn't making it up. She was really freaked out, you guys. More months go by, and I remember one night in particular, and this was so freaky to me, you guys. I was home alone again because my mom was always gone, and I remember it was dark outside, and I was in my gaming room. And next to the PC, I actually had one of those digital alarm clocks, so it plugged into the wall, and it also had a radio in it, so if you wanted to, you can make the alarm your radio turning on. I didn't use the thing. No one ever used it. My mom never set foot in that room. My sister was still gone, so it was really only there for me to see the time. I remember again, I had to go to the bathroom, so I leave the room, and every time I ever left that room, I would like scurry to the bathroom because the hallway was so creepy. It was just one of those, you know, 1,000-yard hallways, like The Shining, when you walked out of that room. I hated it. And I'm in the bathroom, whatever, and out of nowhere, I hear this just loud noise. Like someone had turned on the TV onto static and it was just blaring loud. So I run out of the bathroom because I'm really freaked out, and I run into the gaming room and the radio is on. I mean, full blast, staticky, muffled voices, kind of like when you stop on a channel that's halfway between a real channel and static, and it's just like a jumbled mess. So I quickly turn it off because I was so freaked out by it, and I unplug it from the wall. And again, I leave the room to go to the bathroom. It's unplugged from the wall. I was freaked out, but I just kind of had to deal with it, you know, I'm home alone, whatever. What do you think I hear turn right back on after I had just turned it off? The radio is back on, full blast, just staticky, crazy sounds going on, and I run into the room, I turn it off, I take the damn thing, and I throw it into a closet, down the hall. Rest in peace, T-Rex, rest in peace, alarm clock. I don't want anything to do with it ever again. I can't explain why that would have happened. It had never happened before. I'd never used it. There's no reason why it should have turned back on after I unplugged it from the wall. It was off, you guys. Months go by and I experience pretty much no activity in the house aside from my mom and my sister fighting when she did come over. And trust me, the story will be relevant for the next ghost story. But there's this one time in particular where my sister must have been playing rap music really loud in the car, and it stressed my mom out, so I don't know how this happened, you guys, but she was stressed out and she turned into the driveway. We didn't have a garage, it was just a driveway. She turned into the driveway super fast because she was stressed out by the music and literally hit the house. Thankfully, she wasn't going very fast, so nobody was injured, but she caused an indent into the house. I wasn't there when this happened, I just heard about it afterwards, but keep that in mind for the next story. So I remember one day, and it was light outside, I decided to read a book in the kitchen. I was waiting for someone to come pick me up, and I thought, what better a time than to just sit down and read a book at the table. There's birds chirping outside, everything is super peaceful, the house is totally silent, and out of nowhere, there is the loudest boom I have ever experienced, you guys. It sounded like a wrecking ball had hit the house. Not only that, but the house shook. It physically shook, right? I jump up and I'm freaking out. Like, this was probably the loudest sound I've actually ever heard, ever. I thought someone had ran into the house, you guys. I could have sworn it. So I ran outside and I was looking all around the house. I checked every corner of it. There are no construction workers. Why would they be in a neighborhood? There were no cars that had ran into the house. There were no people that were crashed in the street. Nothing. There was no water lines broken. I remember going inside and checking every room to make sure nothing had happened. The power was still on. There was no generators that blew up. Water wasn't pouring from the ceiling. I rationally have no idea what that boom could have been. At the time, I didn't even really put two and two together that maybe this was some sort of weird residual, I don't know, sound from when my mom had ran into the house. Is it possible for supernatural things to store energy from a specific time? I'm not sure, but I am pretty positive that this sounded like someone had ran into the house. That was the first thing I had jumped to. Someone had hit the dang house. We're nearing the end of staying in that specific house. We're about to move. I remember it was another late night. My mom wasn't home, and I had turned off all of the lights in the house. I had a friend coming to pick me up, so I knew that I didn't need to leave them on. I just sat in the front room, and in the front room where you would sit, there was a big window that let in natural street light. So I wasn't really spooked or anything. I was just sitting on the couch in the dark, but there was still light coming in and I was messing around on my phone. And I remember sitting there probably for about 5 to 10 minutes in the dark with basically the moon and the street lights lighting up the room. I'm sitting there and it's totally quiet. And from the room behind me, I hear in the attic footsteps, and they walk from behind my head, over my head, and all the way down the hallway. I remember in that moment, I was so frozen in fear that I really didn't know what to do. I felt like something was going to come get me at any moment. I literally just listened to footsteps walk all the way down the hall and stop, and it just sitting in silence again. I get up and I book it. I book it out of that house so fast. And I know that some of you are like, well, it was probably a raccoon, it could have been a squirrel, it could have been mice or something. When you listen to a human's footstep versus an animal's footstep, if you relate them to beats, say, someone wearing, say, dress shoes, it's a 1, 2, 1, 2. That's just the way that we walk. This was a person walking over my head in the attic. I'm not kidding. I really couldn't leave that house sooner. Honestly, it was so freaky to me. So that was the first house that I started to have a lot of ghost activity in. I'm not gonna say that those were the most substantial experiences that I had. Off I went to an even more haunted house. So the next house that I lived in 100% convinced me that there are supernatural things in this world that we cannot explain. The home that I ended up moving into, it was another duplex, so it was another full house that was split in the center, but all of these homes in this neighborhood were built in the 1800s, so very, very early 1800s. They were very old. All original wood floors, all original crown molding, everything in this place was beautiful, but it was cheaper because it was in a bad area of town. The first thing that stood out to me about this house is that it was so old, it still had a door in the kitchen, like a serving door. I've never seen that before ever where I'm from. That's not really a common thing. When you walked into the house, it was basically a long house instead of a wide one. You could see down the living room, through the landing where the stairs go up, into the dining room and into the kitchen. You can see all the way through. It had 3 floors to it, so in the center of the house was a stairwell, and it was kind of a weird spiral, but it was enclosed. It wasn't an open stairwell. You'd go up, you'd hit a landing, you'd turn, you'd go up, you'd hit your second floor. And on the second floor, there was another really creepy, shining type hallway that just looked like it kept going on forever. And then if you turned, there was another batch of stairs where you go up, and then you go up and you're in the attic. But that's where I lived. I lived in the attic with another girlfriend. It was kind of split in the center with a doorway so that we both had separate rooms technically, but I had to walk through her room to get to the stairwell to go downstairs. Some of the people that lived there had told me when I got there that there were weird things that have happened to them. They would see shadow figures from time to time. And in the basement was probably the creepiest area ever. So when some of the roommates are telling me about their weird ghost stories and their shadow figures, one of them brings up that he used to have a dog that stayed there. It was a big black dog, like a Newfoundland. He said when it stayed there, it would always go down into the basement and dig at this well in the basement. It was huge. It was massive. You could tell that whatever it was a big circle, had been cemented over. There's no reason why a dog would want to dig at this thing. There were no smells associated with it. If it was something to do with the sewage, or if maybe in the past this is where people in the 1800s would get their water from, I'm not really sure. Nobody could really understand why this dog would be digging at the concrete, but he had dug at it so much that when I went down there, and this is after this dog has been long gone, you can see big chunks of concrete that he had broken up and pulled away from the flooring. I never liked being down there. It really freaked me out knowing that this dog had been digging at whatever that was, that it really wanted to get down there. I remember the first things that started happening that were super strange to me was my bedroom door. And it didn't matter if you latched the door, it would pop open and it would just slowly creep all the way open. The first time that it ended up happening to me, I was actually trying to go to sleep. It was in the middle of the night. I was always pretty freaked out because you could hear when it would pop the latch, it would just make a clicking sound, and then the just slow creak of a door opening. I was so scared. I just covered my head with the blankets and I turned on some music in the background so I could just pretend like it wasn't happening. I didn't want to acknowledge that these things were happening to me, but the door opening became a pretty common occurrence to my room. It really happened nowhere else in the house. It was really just my room that the door would unlatch itself and open. So one of the times that we did decide to have a really large party, I mean large, there were always tons of people, friends of friends of friends of friends that would come to these parties. I remember I was just having a good time and I saw some of my roommates over by this girl and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go talk to them, right? I didn't think anything of it. I sat down and we're all chatting and she just stops us in the middle of a conversation and she's like, oh, by the way, there's a girl named Miranda that lives in your landing. She's like, yeah, there's a girl that lives here. And I'm like, what? Little did I know at the time, I had never met this girl before. I had never even seen her face, but she was a practicing Wiccan. Supposedly she read into these things. At that point, I didn't want anything to do with it. I was like, I'm done with this. I'm out. I'm gonna go get me another drink because I don't want to listen to this. So from then on, everybody in the house would joke about a girl named Miranda living there. She did say girl, and she did say that she was about 15 or 16 years old. And I find it interesting that she had so many details instead of just being like, oh yeah, you have a ghost living here. She had details about what it could have been. To me, I still didn't want to believe in that stuff so much, so I really kind of chose the ignorance is bliss route. I would just stay away from it. Of course, it was kind of like this house just kept pushing the boundaries until I had to accept that this was actually happening. But after that, the only experiences that I really had, even knowing that maybe it was a girl named Miranda that lived there, was my door still opening from time to time in the middle of the night. And it was never like it would open during the day when people were going in and out of the house. It only ever opened at about 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm not kidding. I would check my phone, I'd be freaking out, and then I'd shove the covers over my head and try to go back to sleep, but it only happened at a specific time when nobody was awake. Nobody was walking throughout the house. Why was there a draft? It doesn't make sense. I know it wasn't a draft, you guys. I know it wasn't, but I'm trying to be rational for you. There were too many experiences where when the door did open, you got this feeling like there was somebody there. Again, we had another party. This is months and months later, right? And during this time of my life, I was going through kind of a bad breakup. I was pretty upset about it, and this guy had decided to come to the party, and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't kick him out or anything, so I was really upset, and I went upstairs into my bedroom and was just drinking by myself up there, crying. I remember it was the first time that the door opened, and it did. It opened very slowly, like it always does. It was the first time I think that the door had ever opened with other people still in the house, moving around and doing things. It always seemed like the door only opened when everybody was asleep and I was all alone. This was the first time it opened and there was other activity going on throughout the house, but it was the same thing. The door unlatched itself and slowly creaked open. I'm drunk and crying. I'm just beyond myself. I feel so alone at that time that I did look over at the door and I welcomed her in, which is totally probably not a good thing. Don't do that, you guys. Seriously, don't ever do that. But I was so drunk at the time. I felt so crappy. I was like, you know what? It's fine. Just come in. It's fine. Looking back on that, I do realize how dumb that was. Really don't do that. That's not smart, you guys. It's not smart. But I didn't get a bad vibe from it. Actually felt a little bit better after I did that. I felt like there was somebody there with me. I felt like I wasn't so alone for once. It was really, really different. So from that experience, it seemed like things kind of did pick up a little bit, but I never got a bad vibe from all the things that happened in that house. But there was another time, and it was always like the middle of the night. I woke up at about 3 in the morning, and I had to go pee really bad. But I knew that nobody was awake. The house was totally silent, pitch black, and I'd have to run down the 2 flights of the attic stairs to get to the bathroom in the hallway. And in order to do that, you also kind of have to look down that creepy shining hallway that's totally dark. So I wasn't happy about it, but I knew I wasn't gonna make it to the morning. I ran all the way to the bathroom. I'm not kidding, I ran. So I'm still on the toilet, and I see and hear, I see it, you guys. I see the doorknob turn. It turns all the way, unlatches the door, and pops open. My first thought is immediately this guy roommate that I had that had no boundaries. He would just walk in, he wouldn't knock, he didn't care about nothing. So I'm of course like, hold on, I'm going to the bathroom, just give me a second. Nothing else happens. No one responds to me at all. So I still assume that it's just him outside of the door being tired. He has to go to the restroom too. And then I open the door, and there's nobody there, and I'm looking down the scary shining hallway, which is pitch black. Nothing. Nobody. Nobody's making a sound. No one's awake. Everybody is asleep. I'm by myself, talking to myself. I think that was the moment that I finally truly understood that there was something supernatural happening, that ghosts 100% exist. Because it's easy to say there's a draft. You want to rationalize that. But I saw the doorknob turn. It physically turned as if a hand had grabbed it, turned it, and opened it. Not only that, but it was a reoccurring thing, this thing with the doors. I forgot to mention at this time, there was nobody living in the apartment next to this duplex. It was just us. So that was vacant. I think it was the first moment that I really thought it was somebody else, like a human being, and it wasn't human. It wasn't a person. So this is months after all of the drama with whatever boy then. I had met my current boyfriend, because we've been together for 6 years, so it's been a very long time that we've been together. One of the first couple nights that he actually did end up staying the night, he said he woke up in the middle of the night to the door unlatching and opening. Next morning, because I didn't even wake up at this point. I think I had gotten so used to this door opening that I didn't even wake up. The next morning he told me it, and he was kind of freaking out. He said that he didn't know if he wanted to stay there at the moment. But the ironic thing is that something else happened to him in the same bathroom that happened to me. He said at the time while he was going to the restroom, he felt a tug on the back of his shirt, significantly enough that it wasn't like the clothes had been stuck in a certain position and they popped out of a position, if you know what I'm saying. It was an actual tug. It pulled his collar up because it tugged on the back of his shirt. I think it's really interesting that a lot of the things that did end up happening to everybody in the house were the same types of things. They all kind of correlated with each other, you know? The bathroom, the doors. Sorry, I'm stretching. At one point in time, the roommate that had the dog actually decided to bring the dog back to stay in the house for a little bit. I love animals. But this dog acted really weird. The first day it got there, it acted kind of scared. It didn't really want to be around anybody in the house, not even him. It would go up into the stairwell and sit in the landing of the stairwell and never move. Not move. All day, all night, this dog was always in this landing. Brings to mind what that girl had said at the party. And we had a girl living in our landing, you guys. Finally, the last really substantial thing that ended up happening to me was I had gone traveling around the US and some of the states for about 2 weeks time, and I remember arriving back home. So I'm on the curb and I look up into my bedroom and I see a girl's face. I see specifically high cheekbones, a little bit of hair, but for the most part, it really felt like if you were looking at someone through a dirty window. Everything was kind of blurred. The eyes weren't something you can make out really. It was just cheekbones, and like you could tell it was a human being, but very pale. I thought it was my girlfriend because I had called her earlier telling her I was coming home that day. I didn't think anything of it, so I ran into the house and I'm calling for her, and she's like, "What?" And it took me back because she's literally in the next room over from me. I thought she was upstairs. And I'm like, "Were you just up in my bedroom?" She's like, "No, I've been cleaning all day down here." I'm like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "No, I've not been in your bedroom." When I do open my bedroom door and I kind of try to assess the situation, I realized that where the face was in the window was actually blocked by my bed itself. So that was the first realization that I just saw a ghost. I ended up going back outside and looking back up into the window to see if I had misinterpreted something for a face, and it was gone. There was nothing there. So I'm pretty positive that in some weird way I had got home and it was almost like whatever it was had been waiting for me to get back and acknowledged that I was back home. But I can still see it. It was such a strong experience that it will never leave my head. Finally, towards the end of me living in that house, we had somebody else move in. We'd all joked around and told him that the house was haunted, but he didn't believe in that stuff. I remember it was like literally a couple days that he had been in the house, and he called me and he's panicking, legitimately panicking. And he's like, "I just had to leave the house." And I'm like, "Why? What's wrong?" And he was like, "I just heard someone running." He had gotten so scared that he actually just left the house. He didn't stay. And he kept reiterating he was the only person home, that he looked, there was no one else there, and that the sounds were as real as if he thought someone had broken into the house. But yeah, after that house, I can honestly say I am 100% a believer in supernatural things. I've seen things and I've experienced things that I can't rationalize. Next house I moved into after the previous old one was still in the same neighborhood. It was still built in the 1800s. It was still very old. But my roommate was the same girl that I had lived with before, and she decided she wanted to take up violin. It was awful. She was off at playing the violin, you guys. I mean, when you start out playing violin, it's not easy. It sounds horrible. I remember one day I had gotten off work and grabbed the mail outside the front of the apartment, and there was a batch that had her name on it. I can hear the violin screeching in the background. And I mean screeching, you guys. Like, this wasn't good violin playing. This was bad. So I'm walking up the stairs to the apartment and I'm calling her name, trying to tell her I have mail for her because, you know, I think that she's playing the violin. I can hear it. It's loud. I mean, you can hear it outside of the apartment building. It's so loud. And as I'm going up the stairs, it's getting louder and louder. It is coming from her bedroom. So I'm calling her name outside of her door and she's not answering and the door is closed. So I'm like, whatever, she just can't hear me over this horrible screeching. And I open the door and the violin stops. There's no sound, nothing. And the way it was set up is she had this room, so I'm walking into this room, and then off to the side there was like a strip of the room, so it was hidden behind a wall. So I walk into the room and she wasn't in the main room. I turn to look into that room and nobody's there, you guys. Nobody is there. Not only that, but the violin is in its case. The case is open, but it's in the case. I was shocked. It was the middle of the day. I was so shocked that this had actually happened. I still can't explain it. I have tried again to rationalize this experience, like maybe someone was listening to violin music. No one would listen to horrible violin music. I mean, like beginner violinist screeching like crazy. Very strange things like that. I do feel like if I was into that type of stuff, trying to experience ghost-related things, I think I would get a lot out of them. I think that they would contact me, but I also think that it would bring all of the negativity that comes with it. I don't want anything to do with it though, you guys. But I would love to hear your ghost stories if you have any. I would love to hear your interpretation of what maybe could have happened to me. I know that this was pretty long-winded and hopefully it's not a total mess I have a feeling that these stories are just gonna be all over the place, and I'm sorry for that. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this. This was fun. I love ghost stuff. I've actually been watching some sort of ghost series on TV, and I'm like having nightmares and stuff about it, but I think it's fun to watch and it's intriguing to think about. Yeah, leave a like if you enjoy, and thanks for watching, guys.